Okay. I'm here today to discuss and refute a speech given by one of my colleagues. In her speech given, she focuses on the legalization of prostitution. Prostitution is completely legal in countries such as the United Kingdom and Panama, while in China and Barbados it is not. Other countries have limited legality like the US and Malaysia. Clearly, it is an evident factor that exists worldwide. Her claim stated as follows: legalizing prostitution in the United States serves as a greater benefit to society than current policies. The current policy of today is that prostitution is illegal in the U.S. with the exception of 9 counties in Nevada. My opponent's secondary claims are that legalizing prostitution would 1. Reduce harm, 2. Give back to the society, and 3. Show it was made legal based on morals. I will now go into further detail and address each claim. Claim 1 states that legalizing prostitution will reduce harm in many ways. 1. In sexually transmitted diseases, and 2. in sexual assaults. The statistics used for the grounds of the claim was reported in 1988 and taken out of context. Lambert's report, AIDS in Prostitutes, Not as Prevalent as Believed, was released on September 20th, 1988. This was over a decade ago, making the evidence inadequate. The U.S. Department of Health did report that 3 to 5% of STDs come from prostitutes, while 30 to 35% of STDs come from teenagers. But they also reported that there is no statistical indication in the U.S. that prostitutes are vectors of HIV. The evidence used was merely taken out of context to illuminate the argument. The evidence alone also shows that the STDs that come from teenagers are a lot higher than the number of STDs that come from prostitutes. This emphasized the issue with teenagers rather than in prostitutes, ultimately weakening the direction of the argument. Within Claim 1, my opponent also uses hypothetical evidence to serve as grounds of her point. She states that brothels allow women a safe house because they will be protected and guarded from abuse. This is fairly true, but seems to fall as a minority of the situation. There are 2 kinds of abuse, the kind that is paid for and the kind that is not. One example of unpaid abuse occurred in one of the classiest brothels in Melbourne, Australia, called The Planet. There are alarm buttons that prostitutes are allowed to press in case of an emergency. But in an interview with the Sunday Age paper, the owner of the brothel explained that in most cases the damage is done by the time he or the other workers arrive. The abuse becomes instantaneous and difficult to prevent in these situations. My opponent's second claim states that legalizing prostitution would give back to society. With legalizing prostitution, new businesses would be created. Massage parlors, escort services, and brothels would be some of these examples. This would in fact give tangible benefits to society, but also corrupted alterations. The change in law will not benefit the woman working at the brothels because in order for one to be a registered prostitute, STD checks would be enforced. This forces women to undergo this process while clients are not. A legalized system of prostitution that mandates health checks and certification only for women and not for the clients is blatantly discriminatory to women. The protection of these prostitutes is only partially given. The views that men have on women is an element in society that can be altered with these so-called benefits of legalization. Last but not least, my opponent's third claim is that legalizing prostitution would show that it was only made illegal due to morals. Morality can be a key factor to making a decision, but however, morality is not the only reason to why prostitution is illegal. My colleague refers to this act as 2 consulting adults who are harming no one. This is merely a force of dichotomy. The issue is not as simple as that. Sexual assault and abuse is a high crime that is present in prostitution. According to Janice G. Raymond, ever since Australia legalized prostitution, the growth of illegal prostitution has risen. This will not lower the rate of prostitution or regulate it, but advocate it. In countries where brothels are legal, abuse is still majorly present. The evidence provided also mainly consisted of hypothetical evidence, such as if we were to continue to regulate morality, we will be subjected to the morals of whoever is in power. In conclusion, the use of outdated data, manipulated statistics, and lack of support strayed the direction of the argument. This altered the credibility of the presenter, and the original claim and grounds should be reevaluated. Thank you.
Right, the main issue and the secondary points are labeled, so that's okay. It sounds at the beginning like you're going to be doing a comparison between the places that have legalized and the places that haven't done the legalization, but I only got one spot where such a comparison was done, and that was in the Australia evidence that you had toward the end of the argument. It seems like that would have been a rich vein to mine for some counter evidence on a couple of these points. Your label on the first point was relatively clear. You've got to challenge the evidence being old. Okay, that's a pretty reasonable explanation. By the way, it's not just a decade, it's more than 2 decades old if you do the math. 1988 was a long time ago. The statistic that you get involved in, I'm not sure that that really helps much, either the advocate or your position. You start focusing on the HIV nature of that data, and I don't know what that means. How am I supposed to infer whether or not people are safer without using prostitutes, or using prostitutes as opposed to having sex with teenagers, which I'm not sure is really an option for anybody except other teenagers. At least I hope not. All right. It's not quite clear how your response answers this particular issue. There's an argument about the hypotheticals on the safe house. I did think that you had a good piece of information there that talked about how there's really not much they can do because the damage is already done. That's okay. I think you need to contrast that to the evidence that the advocate presented, and I don't remember that you did that kind of contrast. On the second point, where you talk about economic activity, you basically concede that there would be economic activity. I'm not sure that you want to do that, especially, for instance, since you later on talk about how illegal prostitution thrives. Well, if it creates a black market for this particular service, is it going to have the same kind of benefits? In fact, there might be additional benefits, regulatory costs, or other issues that come up as a consequence. But if you're even granting that, you kind of get into this argument that there's going to be some counter costs, that there's something else that's going to happen. And there's sort of an implication there that part of the counter cost is that people will change the way they view women. But that was not really developed as an argument. I didn't really hear any evidence that applied to that point, and it remains very abstract. And then on the last point, on the issue of morality, I think you do want to point out that the morality issue is largely off topic, except for the cause-effect claim that's being presented here. And I think you could demonstrate that morality, like you said, morality is often used as a choice in all kinds of decision-making. I don't know that you necessarily have to defend that as a standard. That's okay if you want to. But the idea that there's going to be, that this is going to fix a problem, or that people will be more moral, or that morality will no longer affect decision-making, I think that you needed a more direct answer on this. And the advocate's hypothetical that we would be subjected to the will of the majority at any particular time based on morality issues largely goes unchallenged, even though I think that there are some big inferences there that probably really require some challenging. You're doing way too much reading also, so you want to try and avoid doing that. Thank you.